Hello friends, acquaintances, and enemies of all ages. My name is Combat Bird, and for today's Year of Kirby video, we'll be taking a look at one of my favorite Kirby games of all time, Kirby's Squeak Squad. We find our hero Kirby indulging in his favorite activity, eating delicious strawberry shortcake. But right as Kirby goes in for that first delectable bite, the cake vanishes. Enter the Squeaks, a group of mice who specialize in theft. Kirby spends the majority of the game running through Dreamland chasing after the Squeaks, all in an attempt to get his cake back. A riveting story, I know. Visually, you'll notice that not much has changed over the last few Kirby games. This really did become the definitive Kirby style. However, unlike the most recent game, The Amazing Mirror, Squeak Squad went back to a more traditional type of level system. It seems like fans online are torn about this, because while some people really enjoyed the open world, go-where-you-please gameplay that Amazing Mirror gave us, others, myself included, would really prefer a good old-fashioned level select. And that's exactly what we get here. Beat a certain number of levels to unlock the boss, beat the boss to move on to the next world. Pretty simple stuff. Well, other than the level select, what else is different from the past couple of Kirby games? One of the main things I noticed was that parts of the environment are actually interactable. You can cut or burn grass, light candles, and even use electricity to shock enemies who are touching the same piece of metal as you. I know this probably seems like a small detail, but it adds, and it can encourage you to save specific abilities for certain areas. Speaking of saving specific abilities, did I mention that this game was for the Nintendo DS? In other words, touchscreen controls. Everyone loves forcing gimmicks into already existing games in a non-creative way. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, and honestly, Squeak Squad's touch functionality is incredibly simple, keeping it from feeling disruptive to the traditional Kirby gameplay. Your bottom screen is a bottomless pit known as Kirby's stomach, and you can collect various abilities which you're able to save for later, or these little mini Kirbys that come together to create a 1-up once you've collected 3 of them. You can also mix abilities. For the most part, this really just results in a random ability if you aren't happy with the 2 that you have, but there are actually a couple of specialty ones as well. You can make fire swords, ice swords, lightning swords, as well as ice and thunder bombs. Yes, I know I said lightning sword and thunder bomb, but that's what the game says, so I'm rolling with it. This feature, at the very least, helps make the bottom screen feel like more than a storage area. Oh, and there's one other big thing you can store in Kirby's stomach, and it actually brings us into our next change. Squeak Squad kept the large amount of collectibles from some of the previous Kirby games, but it improved upon them. While before, how many you had was kind of hidden, you really didn't know how many you needed in each level, you could only go off the indicator of whether you collected them all or not, Squeak Squad shows you exactly how many chests are in each level, and even shows you which ones you've collected so far. That way, you can get a general idea of how far into the level it is. Once you collect these chests, they go into Kirby's stomach, taking away from his inventory space of 5. And some levels have up to 3 chests inside of them, meaning if you were hoping to get all of them in one go, you'll be making the game a little bit harder on yourself. Honestly, this mechanic is probably for the best, because unlike previous games, if I'm having a hard time on a level, I can not only hold spare abilities in case I lose my current one, but also max some tomatoes. Think you're about to die to a boss? Pop that tomato, boyo, and suddenly it's like you were never even injured. So what do these collectibles do? A few things actually. You've got some returning features of the past games, such as changing Kirby's colors or playing songs in the sound room, but the most important collectibles are the scrolls. By collecting a scroll, you actually unlock more moves for the various copy abilities. This may sound a little bit silly, but it's pretty interesting and certainly gives you more incentive to find them all. At the end of each level, you run into a member of the Squeaks. You can then choose one of 3 options. Either A, run to the stage exit, B, grab the chest and then book it for the stage exit, or C, go destroy that Squeak for no other reason than to prove you can. Or if you weren't fast enough, they may have taken the chest with them. I love the fact that you have options here based on what you're in the mood for. Oh, and I almost forgot, Squeak Squad actually has some relatively new sub-games as well. You've got Smash Ride, a kind of bumper cars type game. You drag on the touchscreen in the direction you wish to shoot your character, and your goal is to knock off opponents to gain points. Most points at the end wins, of course. Next we have Speedy Tea Time. Now this one is the generic who can react faster minigame that we've come to expect from Kirby games, but this time they've added in some actual gameplay. Instead of just reactively touching the screen or hitting the button, you have to stop and think. A bunch of food will appear, but the larger food is worth more points, and if you eat a bomb, then you practically skip your entire next turn. This is a nice improvement over the typical reaction-based Kirby game. Lastly, we have Treasure Shot, where you have to use the touchscreen to shoot balls at various sweets as they come out of treasure chests. Pretty simple, most points win, but at least it's a new subgame. And honestly, those are the biggest changes to Squeak Squad. If you're interested in the story, Kirby eventually gets his chest that supposedly had the cake in it back from the Squeaks. However, it's full of pure evil, which is what eventually becomes your final boss fight. You may notice a pattern amongst 80% of the Kirby games, that the final boss is almost always just some giant embodiment of evil, and that everything up to this point was just a giant misunderstanding. Okay, that means it's time for the Ability Showcase! We've got a few new abilities in this Kirby game, one that's particularly special. Starting with Animal. Kirby gains the ability to dig through various parts of the environment, such as dirt or snow. He can do a paw swipe and even a move called Maul, where he jumps onto an enemy and attacks them repeatedly. Bubble. An ability made entirely for Squeak Squad, as hitting an enemy with a bubble attack will result in that enemy's copy ability becoming a bubble, allowing Kirby to pick it up and save it for later. Magic. While this isn't the first Kirby game Magic is in, this time it's completely revamped. Instead of being a screen clearing ability, you now have 3 different moves: throwing cards forward, releasing birds, and unleashing a giant menacing clown on your enemies. Metal. Very similar to the Stone ability of past games, Kirby becomes mostly invulnerable. Unlike Stone, Kirby cannot roll down hills, but he is capable of doing a butt slam as well as flying. Mixes. There are a total of 5 mix abilities in the game. You've got a Fire Sword, Ice Sword, and Lightning Sword, all of which allow for the player to use the effects of each, but with the sword moveset. This includes freezing water, shocking metal areas, or lighting candles, fuses, and so on. Sadly, none of these moves can be used in the water, which is totally reasonable, but it kinda takes away one of the strongest aspects of the sword ability. You also have an Ice Bomb and a Thunder Bomb, which function exactly how you'd expect, just the bomb moveset with the effects of ice and lightning. Ghost. Upon collecting all pieces of the Ghost Metal while playing the game, the Ghost ability becomes available for Kirby in the museum. This ability slightly limits Kirby, making him slower, unable to climb ladders, or really interact with the environment at all. However, Kirby is now able to take over any non-boss enemy in the game. This was like opening a whole new game for me when I was a kid. It's so exciting, because while you'd expect all of these to just be generic copy abilities with different skins, they really aren't. You can take over literally any enemy. Even things like the Onion Bomb that dies upon use. This ability is super fun to use and makes you want to try it on every enemy you can. If I had to choose my favorite part of Squeak Squad, the Ghost ability would be it. Alright everyone, that is it for this week's Year of Kirby video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.